Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. This is the Point of Impact. I'm your host, as always, Aaron Hale. And man, am I pumped about this guest in the conversation I just had. Wow. Drewbie Wilson is VP at Break Free Academy. He's a coach, a mentor, podcaster, best-selling author of 2 books, and a fellow Buckeye. We talked about, though he's modest about it, his hard-scrabble childhood aspects of both of his books and his podcast. We talked about procrastination and imposter syndrome, where they come from, how everybody has it to one level or another. Talked about the effect it really does have on the outcome of our goals in life and success, and how you can work on and get past procrastination. We also talked about the dichotomy between confidence and humility, how we need a healthy dose of, and to strike a balance between the two. We also talked about how you can talk to anybody in a gathering, how you can pour into you, and how you can have somebody have a conversation with you that you would learn from, even though you don't think you have anything to add. We all have value to add in a conversation. And there's so much more. There were so many gold nuggets in this one, it's hard to list them all. So I just won't. I'll let you listen for yourself. Before we do so, I ask you for one small favor. You learned about this show one of 2 ways. Either somebody shared it with you, or you found it in a podcast search. Either way, it was a result of somebody paying it forward. Somebody shared it with you, and I ask you to do the same. Send it to somebody that you believe will benefit from the show. And please, give it a 5-star rating and write a stellar review. That way it'll show up higher in the search results, and it'll get out to more people, and we can have a greater impact together. And without further ado, Drewbie Wilson. Drewbie, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you were able to reschedule. I apologize for the scheduling mistakes. That's entirely my fault and user error when it comes to calendars, scheduling, and the recording platforms. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. I understand that technology is a blessing and a curse. As we were just talking about before we were getting started, technology has allowed us a lot of amazing things in this life, but it also can be a bit of a hassle. And so I totally understand and appreciate your flexibility. I think God has a reason for us to be here today versus any of those other days when we had scheduled. So I'm very excited to be here with you, and really just excited to, get to chat and meet and learn a little bit more about you while we're here.
That raises a great point. How do you feel about that when it comes to technology? It's supposed to make our lives so much easier, but it seems to, at the same time, clutter our lives. We have apps that help us organize other apps, and we're stacking these things on top of each other, and we seem to be more frantic and busy all day, each and every day. So how do you deal with that?
So I am someone who really tries to embrace technology and recognize that nothing is perfect. So for me, my life, and we'll talk a little bit about this more over time, I think, is I've learned to be very, very disciplined and very, very routine, which I believe is what has allowed me to create the level of success that I have in life, and really more intentionally create a life of design. And so when I start thinking about technology, I'm really thinking of what is the tool that I can utilize to be more effective with my time? Because time is our most valuable asset. We know how to make money. We know how to build relationships, but that time is the real resource. And if we're doing things correctly, we can make sure that we are spending that time on the right things. And I like to use the technology to keep me organized and on the right track.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a point I make all the time too, is that we're always talking about freedom, right? Time freedom, of course. But it all is like financial freedom, work freedom, autonomy, family, freedom for family. But it all comes down to time. For financial freedom, it's freedom to buy back your time. So what I've found when it comes to the technology is what apps and what softwares, what platform out there can help me buy back my time. Sometimes that's what things can I do in my day to say no to more things. I think it was even Warren Buffett that said, the most successful people are the ones that are able to say no most. So you mentioned your background, you in coming up and learning about discipline, and I did read your book, Crush the Day, and I was pleased to find out that though you're not a native Buckeye, you are raised in my home state of Ohio, and not too far from where I went to school, Bowling Green. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so as a young pup, I was born in Daytona Beach, Florida. My mom and dad had a bit of a tumultuous relationship when I was young. And so we ended up in Arkansas for a short time and then landing in Ohio when I was around 5 or 6 years old. So, my mom, single mom of 3 young boys, moved in with her mom there in Ohio, and she raised us up to being, good, wholesome young men that have a bit of a story. So if you guys want to know more about that, definitely recommend checking out my book, Crushing the Day. But yeah, we grew up in Ohio. I learned a lot about life. I learned a lot about business. And really the fun thing is that in my experience now, Ohio really taught me a lot about that wholesome community feel, really how to get connected with good individuals that have a great mission. And then getting out of Ohio and coming down to Dallas also showed me that there's a lot of world and opportunity out there where you can take that wholesome community feel and the service aspect of life, and you can get it out in front of a much bigger audience of people just by proximity of being in a different room, having different conversations.
Yeah, the what you mentioned about your family and a tumultuous childhood, I really was interested in your mom and your folks. They're you said they were hardworking, but they weren't always smart with money, or maybe it was just in their decision making powers. The I was really caught by how sometimes was it your mom or your dad who would sacrifice money dedicated, it was necessary for paying the utilities or rent or something like that, so that they could show you they loved you and they appreciated you with a gift or something. Did you recognize that at the time as poor financial decision making? And did you see any deeper than that? And when did you come to the realization? And what did you think about that?
Man, first of all, thank you so much for reading my book and really taking such a deep interest in it. I appreciate that you really went above and beyond to learn and read my story. And so to answer your question, my mom was the one who primarily raised us and made a lot of those sacrifices in her life. And, I've since writing the book and in doing some reflecting, I maybe have come across a little harsh on my mom and some of the way that she made her decisions, because I realized, being a a father and a husband, that we put ourselves in situations and we make decisions based on our circumstance. And so when I look back at the circumstances, I think she was just doing the best she could to try to be a great provider for 3 young boys. I mean, she was raising us on our own. My dad wasn't around because he was doing his own selfish things. And so, I think it was a bit of poor money management, but I also think she was a product of her upbringing as well. I mean, it's not like when you go to school, they teach you how to be extremely financially stable. They teach you how to do the work, and they teach you to show up from a certain time to a certain time. But I can't say that in my schooling career, they ever really sat me down in how to like run a household and truly manage finances. And so I don't fault her for not being as educated on that side of it. I do give her a lot of credit for how hard she worked to make up for those sacrifices, though.
You're absolutely right about school. I mean, home economics was cooking and sewing. No,
It was a different class.
yeah, I know. I took that over shop, which is also not very well put together either. But yeah, I took home economics because I love to cook, and I figured there'd be more ladies in the class. It doesn't teach you anything about economics or running a household or personal finance. And it's a shame about that, because I still believe, today the schools do not prepare young people for what to do when the paycheck comes in, or how to maximize their income and their savings and their investments, and minimize their tax liabilities and all those kind of things. And then how to responsibly set up those buckets for expenses. Pay yourself, and then you pay for the utilities, and you pay for food, and you make sure there's enough for entertainment. So yeah, I totally understand. And I know I had 2 parents. I had a stepdad, and I know that my folks, they worked very hard, and they really wanted to give my brother, my sister, and myself, the best they could. But we all have our perspective on life, the filters that we see everything, and we make decisions, and it's framing, it's mindset, and
100%.
and how you now, as a coach, as a mentor, how do you help others expand their frame? How do you get them to change that perspective and really get to see life through that different lens?
Yeah, absolutely. So at one point in time, I was approached by a wonderful woman who was asking for a little bit of help using a software that I was working with. And the wonderful woman, she said, "Hey, how much for an hour of your time?" And it was one of the most humbling questions that I've ever been asked, because I was still working in an hourly mindset. So immediately I started doing the math of, okay, if I make $2,000 a month salary and $2,000 a month commission, and I'm working 40 hours a month, how much am I making? And if I was going to do something overtime, you should get 2.5 times for overtime, because that's how it works. And I just doing all these little calculations, trying to understand how much I should charge for my time. And it really, I think it broke something in my mind, because when I got to the number and realized, hey, you're giving up an hour of your day for $20 or $25. And $25 doesn't go very far. And so all of a sudden, this big crashing feeling came down on me of, what is my time truly worth? Because if I only had 24 hours left to live, would I still be willing to exchange an hour of time for that dollar amount? And nobody is guaranteed another 24 hours, right? We don't know if we could have some tragic, catastrophic event happen in our lives and time not be given anymore. But everybody kind of operates in this mentality of they've got all this time and they've got all this opportunity in the future to do the things they want to do or to live the life they want to live, because they're currently chasing a dollar amount that they think is going to get them the thing that they want. Did I explain that well?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was as I was listening, I was thinking back to when my brain was broken. I think it was the moment when I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then right immediately after read the Cash Flow Quadrant, his follow-up book, and it's the same thing. We trade our time for money, and I didn't realize this when I was young. I was in high school and college, and I was earning minimum wage at restaurants, cooking in the back, in the kitchen, and I didn't have a whole lot of value on the work. It was just, if I put in this number of hours, I'll get this much money back, and I'll be able to spend it however I want. If I ran out of money, I knew I needed to go do some more work. But if there was something that was worth more than the $7.25 an hour or whatever I was working when I was a kid, then I had no compulsion, to show up to work. But then when I realized that my time is so much more valuable, then what dollar amount do I have to put on that to sacrifice it or to give it to any effort? So now I work backwards instead of counting how many hours I need to work to make money. I say, my time, like my annual salary is so much, so I cut that divided by 2,000. If you are, I'm going to do the math now. What is it? If your annual salary should be $500,000, then you divide that by 2,000. You get your hourly rate is $100 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'd rather be doing if you need to be doing $100 an hour work to make that kind of money, then you should not be mowing the lawn or cleaning the house and doing the laundry. Hire somebody for $20 an hour because you're making $100 an hour. Is it worth it to hire somebody to do that kind of work? And it's that kind of mindset shift. We don't have a housekeeper because we're rich. We're rich because we have a housekeeper.
It's a weird thing to try to get across to individuals that grow up in that hourly, base salary kind of mindset. But once you get them to realize they're just flipping the variables, instead of trading the time for money, you're saying, hey, my money is worth X amount of time. To me, I know, do the math. Hey, I want to make 500 grand. Like you said, if I want to work 40 hours a week and I want to take 2 weeks of vacation every year, that means I work 50 weeks a year. So 50 times 40 hours is the 2,000 hours that you mentioned. You start doing the math, and it's just a simple math equation. But here's where the other side of what I've found is really important. Because we can make a lot of money, but making a lot of money is not what truly makes you successful. And what I mean by that is someone came to me at one point when I had started my journey and started making a little money, right? I went from making $40,000 a year to making $100,000 and then making $200,000. And I was kind of thinking I was hot stuff. And he says, hey man, I see that you're having success. I see that you're making money. I see that you're living good. But how would it feel if you had a heart attack and you had to sit up in heaven and watch some other guy sleep in bed with your wife and raise your kid with your money because you didn't make the time to take care of yourself first? And that was a bit of a gut punch.
What did you tell yourself? Is that the decision point when you decided to get? I know you were fairly unhealthy and overweight at that point. So, what was that decision point, or did it all come at the same time?
It was a big culmination of things, right? It's the universe, God, whatever you subscribe to, has a way of putting that message in front of you enough times for you to get it. And so it was a combination of this guy who I had some respect for coming in and saying, hey, man, like, you're doing the work, but you're not doing all of the work, because there's more to it than just making money. Because if you want to live a long time, you also have to be healthy, and you also have to keep your mindset focused and dialed in, because if you let your mind run wild, that will just sabotage everything in your physical life. And so the combination of that and my wife at the time telling me, hey, I know we had a baby and we're making these changes, but like, I'm not as physically attracted to you as I once was because of the decisions we've been making. And it wasn't from a place of like hurt. It was more of like a love thing. Hey, I want us to have a fun, healthy relationship. And it's important to me that we both have this health and this, this certain look about us in our life. And so having all of those things come together at the same time and kind of having this conversation with myself of, hey, I don't want to be the guy who made a lot of money but didn't have a lot of time with his family because I was not taking care of myself. And what I always tell people is there's 4 areas of life that matter. Number 1 is sleep. You cannot survive without sleep. So getting rest is like the number 1 thing that you need to be wary of, because it's real easy to burn the candle at both ends and burn yourself out. And that causes a whole host of long-term issues. So sleep is the number 1 thing. But then there's 3 other areas that people really care about. Usually, your relationships are at the top. Your family, your kids, your friends, your whoever that relationship may be, you put that at the top. And then you put your business, because you have to make money as the tool and the resource, because that's what allows us to keep surviving and buying back our time. So we all have to make money at some point, unless you were born into wealth, which even then you still have work to do because you have to maintain that wealth. And then we put ourselves last. So our health and our fitness and our hobbies, we put ourselves at the bottom, when the truth is, every time you've ever gotten on an airplane, if you've gone for, a flight, the first thing they tell you is to buckle up, and if anything happens, to put your own oxygen mask on first. And why do they do that? They want you to be able to take care of yourself first.
It's another one of those dichotomies where we got the picture backwards. Trading time for money when we need to, get the money so we can buy back our time. And it's about, that freedom, but it's the freedom to do what? And you got to take your, it's the freedom from money, freedom time, even, that health freedom. Because if you're overweight, you're unhealthy, you're just bad joints, or sickly, you can't jump down on the floor and roll around with your kids. There's a lot of things you can't do when you're not healthy, but it comes down to, what do we need all this freedom for? This health, the money, the time? Is it just for yourself, or is it to make that impact on others' lives? And that's the whole point of this podcast. And you have your podcast as well, where this is a daily, which I think is pretty gutsy. But tell me about that. You have a daily message for your audience.
Yes. So my podcast is called Crushing the Day. And that all stems back from when I started my journey of personal evolution, deciding, hey, I'm going to focus on being a little bit better every single day and really trying to carry forth and extract that greatness that I was born on this planet to bring. Getting up is hard. I don't like working out. I used to be, about 315 pounds at my biggest. I'm about 6'1", so I'm a bigger guy in general, but as a whole, I've never been a fan of exercise. It wasn't something that got me excited, which is why I would, eat extra sweets and how I got overweight. But when I started this journey, I knew if I didn't get up right away, get out of bed and go and eat the frog, as they say, do the hard work first by going to the gym and working out, that I was going to have an off day, because I felt guilty for robbing my family of their future with me because I didn't get up and go and do the hard work that I knew I needed to do in order to create that future, right? I had to do the hard work to buy back my time in the future. I was making future deposits. And what I realized is that if I got up and I did my workout and I focused on my gratitude and I did all the things that I didn't want to do first, the rest of the day was relatively easy to manipulate and to navigate. And so I just would wake up and I'd tell myself, crush the day before it crushes you. Because it's real easy to wake up and get right into politics or social media or some sort of negative mind state, and that just completely derails your whole day. But if the whole focus is, hey, I'm going to crush the day before it crushes me, so whatever comes at me, I'm just going to knock it out and I'm going to keep moving forward, that became my personal mantra. So much so that I would tell it to myself all day long, hey, crush the day before it crushes you, crush the day before it crushes you. And then I would put it on my posts and I would hashtag it. And at some point I decided to turn it into a daily message, because I recognize that motivation is fleeting. You might have it for a little bit because you heard something powerful, but then you get right back into the mode of negativity because that negative stuff creeps up. And so I figure if I give a little motivating message every day, get people excited, get them thinking about how they can be, focused on being better, and hearing it from someone else on the journey, because, sometimes it feels a little lonely on this entrepreneurship path. Hearing that motivation from someone else that's on the same journey gets them excited. And if I can just get one person excited, or, get them to take action on their day in a way that makes them better off than when I found them or when they tuned in, then, hey, I know I'm living out my life's mission. And the other thing is, I know that there have been individuals that have listened to my podcast the morning that they were thinking of taking their lives and choosing not to do that. And I've gotten those messages before. And so it's something to me that it's really, really important to keep doing at this point, because you never know who's watching, who's paying attention to your content, or who's listening. And you never know what kind of impact you're truly making for the long term, because you may say something, today someone may listen to this conversation and they change their entire life, which allows their kids to have a better life and their future generations to have a better life. That's the kind of impact we can make if we focus on crushing the day.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing to hear from somebody, that your message saved my life. I don't know where I heard it, but it's become a little bit of a mantra for me, and a reminder that I've got a voice and a story. But somebody had told me, or I read it somewhere, that it said, perhaps your story of success may be somebody else's blueprint for survival. And that's just really stuck with me. So, I don't know if what I'm saying is having any effect until after the fact. I do get some feedback, just like you, and it is gratifying. But it also brings me to something I read in your bio about your two superpowers are confidence and humility. And that's an interesting dichotomy. How do you strike a balance between confidence and being humble?
I think for me, it comes back to a willingness to admit that I don't know what I don't know. there's a lot of things on this planet that I have absolutely no clue about. And I'm willing to admit that. But I'm also willing to admit that I've had success and I've done things in my life that allow me a bit of wisdom that can be shared with others. And so sometimes people have referred to a feeling they get called imposter syndrome, where they want to go and step up and lead, or they've been asked to maybe teach a class of some sort. And internally, they're fighting this dialogue of like, oh, you're not good enough, or what makes you think you deserve that? Or there's all these different arguments that you'll have with yourself in that moment. And for me, when I think about that feeling, and I know everyone at every level of life has dealt with it in some fashion, because I work with people that make $20,000 a year, and I work with people that make $2 million a year. Everyone in that whole range has told me the same thing. Hey, I don't know if I belong in that room. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm this, that, whatever. And the truth is, I look at that as coming from a place of humility and coming from a place of integrity. Because when you're willing to say, hey, I don't know what I don't know, and I recognize that there's so much more for me to learn, I think that's truly unlocking your ability to grow and scale exponentially. But it also comes...
Oh,
Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad you said that about integrity. And yeah, we're social creatures. We actually need others in our society, in our community, just interaction with them to survive. That's why solitary confinement is one of the worst punishments a prison inmate can endure. It's just being separated from other humans. And because of that, we desire others' acceptance and acknowledgement. So when we stand, that's the whole root of that fear of standing in front of crowds and speaking, and like all those that you've coached, and that imposter syndrome. It's that fear of being judged by our peers. So yeah, but it also is on the flip side of that coin, is that we all have something to teach, and that's the humility part. Everybody has something to teach me. Everybody is better than me in some way, and I have something to share with the group.
So you're absolutely right. And that's, I think, where the other side of the confidence comes in. Because if you're willing to be humble and live in integrity, it also allows you the ability to, as you said, when you're in a room or having a conversation, it's okay to talk about the things you have personal experience with. Just because your perspective of success or your version of it may not be the same as the other individuals in the room, it doesn't mean that you haven't achieved something that could be of benefit to another individual. Maybe you're really great at business, but you struggle with your relationships at home. And you meet a guy that's really great at his relationships at home, who just needs a few little tweaks in his business to be exponentially more successful. And now the two of you come together with the confidence of, I don't know what I don't know, that's why I'm here, but I'm confident in telling you about the things I have receipts and can prove that I've done, and I'll tell you nothing more than that, right? You never lead above the level that you're currently on, and when you operate with that mentality, you can come in with 100% confidence to say, these are the things I've done, these are the successes I've had, these are the failures I've had. How can we work together to continue growing as a unit?
I think it was Simon Sinek was talking about the competence quotient. At first, we're not very competent, so we're not very confident. We have to have confidence in our other abilities and personalities and skills and all that until we build up our competence in a certain area, and that confidence grows. But I think it also another factor of that is borrowing, the credibility and confidence of others. And that's why, being around, the right circles, drawing off of others' expertise, others, other, beneficial factors. And just, I want to be the dumbest person in the room. I want to be the weakest or the slowest, and I want to grow from them. But I also need to bring something to the table. So that's where, that social interaction comes in. That's where we share what we've got, and we all grow and benefit together. And
Can I touch on that for a second?
Absolutely.
I think you said something that's really important there, in that maybe the listener today is feeling as though they're a small fish in a big pond, or they're not quite at the level of the individuals who are hosting the party that they are getting ready to attend. And what I'd like to reiterate for that listener is that value exchange is not always monetary. There are some extremely successful individuals out there who would absolutely love to pour into you and mentor you and share their wisdom, and money is not their motivator. So don't feel as though you have to have the same level of success to be at a table as someone, because you could show up and say, hey, I'm here to set up chairs, I'm here to clean up, take out garbage. I'm willing to provide whatever level of value that I can offer with my current skill set, in order to let you know how much I appreciate the seat at the table that I've been given. And I think so many people miss that opportunity in life because they're afraid to offer what they have, in fear that it's not good enough for the individual on the other side. And a lot of times the other individual really doesn't want anything from you other than a little bit of gratitude and appreciation for their time.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking when you were talking about going to a party or a dinner or a social gathering of some sort. And I distinctly remember multiple times where I fail in that aspect. I blame being deaf, nearly deaf. But I've gone to my wife and said, I just had the greatest conversation. That person was, it was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was super friendly. And she would say, what was his name? I have no idea. What does he do? I have no idea. I did all of the talking. He kept asking questions, and he was so interested. And she said, "You don't know who it was?" No, I don't know anything. Like, he would not let
you feel really special,
right? And that's the secret is, don't be interesting, be interested. And the people who we want to share with others those who make us feel interesting, and they're interested in us. So if you're, like you said, if somebody is feeling inferior in a crowd, yeah, we all have that kind of feeling. All you got to do is just keep asking questions. Tell me more. That's interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit? And I tell you what, they're going to love talking to you and sharing what they have with you. It happens to me all the time. It's like I just got my pocket picked by this incredible conversationalist. I learned nothing from them. It's hilarious.
I love that. And that's to me one of the greatest conversations that you can have. And when it comes to building a business, that's the greatest way that you can create a client relationship. When you work with someone and they feel as though they've done all of the talking and they just talk themselves right into doing the transaction and moving forward with you, that's the ultimate feeling of success. It's like, I didn't even have to really work for it. We had a conversation and they basically begged me to take their credit card and take them to the next step. And it always comes back to the humility and integrity of that, because you can have a lot of confidence in being able to have those kinds of conversations. It's about knowing that you're having the right conversation and providing the right solution for that individual. And as long as you're doing that, man, that's the kind of person I want to get behind, because you're truly operating from a level of integrity and service that's going to make that generational impact that I'm on a mission to create in my life.
You know, I believe that it's one of the most difficult things. And this is another one of those things that's taught in school that I think is wrong, is that we're taught to, raise our hand and give an answer. And I know kids will be raising their hands before the teacher's even done talking. Instead, we're not actively listening. If we can listen to the point where we can respond, we can actually repeat or at least paraphrase what the speaker actually said first, and then comment or ask follow-up questions to what they said, instead of just waiting for us to inject our own preset, response, our own opinions. It's more of just a battle for time, right? It's my turn to talk. It's my turn to be interesting. We're not gaining anything. We're not learning anything from that. So it's another one of those things where we have to be humble enough to learn from them, and we've got to be confident enough to know that we have that ability to share, to add value. And sometimes adding value is just making sure somebody feels like they're important, they're heard and understood. So tell me now, you're an author for a couple books. We just spoke about one. Tell about the other one, the social media master.
Yeah, so when I released my first book, Crushing the Day, it was really just about telling my story, talking about the bookmark of where I was in life, having reached this kind of apex of success that I was having. And in my professional career that I have, where we coach and mentor and work with small business owners and entrepreneurs, we really focus in on how amazing individuals, much like yourself, Aaron, can go out and tell their story using these social platforms. And when you start understanding how to be very intentional with your message, you can make sure that it's in front of the right individual. And if you have a product or service, you can create a pretty great marketing process or lead generation process, leveraging these social platforms, sharing great content, right? We talk about in the book, Social Media Mastery, how you can go out and become the go-to person, the authority, the known individual for a certain marketplace or a certain product by simply doing what you do best, being your authentic self, telling your story, because that's what social media was really created for. If you think back to like the college days when the Winklevoss boys and Zuckerberg and all those guys were creating social media, they made it so they could creep on all the other kids in their class. They wanted to see what they were up to. So fast forward 2 decades or whatever it's been since it was originally released, we now know with millions of users online at any given point, as a small business owner or entrepreneur, our clients are online as well. So in the book, my focus is showing whoever, whatever business you are in, showing you how that you can take your message, put it online using a simple formula that educates and entertains their audience and leverages the social media algorithm by knowing what kind of content your user and client wants to see, and making sure that you're consistently staying top of mind. And when you do that, you build the know, like, and trust factor. And that's when people want to do business with you, when they know you, like you, and have that level of trust.
And do you agree with Grant Cardone, who says it's not about quality, it's just quantity? Just keep putting stuff out there. Just stay in front of their faces. Stay. Keep their attention. Or
honestly, sorry to interrupt you. I would say it's 80-20, because I do agree that it's a crowded space, and humans, I think statistically, see somewhere around 15 or 20,000 different advertisements every day. We make thousands and thousands of decisions. So it's easy to be forgotten about if you're not top of mind. So I will agree with him in the fact that, yes, if you're not putting content out there consistently, someone else is, and you're being forgotten about. That's just a fact of life. But I will also say that with as much noise as there is in the world, and you probably have some personal experience with this, Aaron, if your message is not direct, if your enunciation is not clear and people can't specifically pinpoint what you're talking about, people don't feel as though you're interested in them. They see it as more of a vague, you're talking to everybody, and I'm not everybody. I'm Drewbie, the meme lord, with a very specific need or problem. So that's where that line of communication of quality versus quantity really comes into play.
if you don't craft that message the right way, then you just become more of that noise.
Bingo.
Everybody, is inundated in all that advertising that they get every day, all day. That makes a lot of sense. So you need to be consistent and prolific. It also has to be tailored and directed, right?
You're absolutely right about that. And that's why I love a podcast like this, because we can come in and have a very casual conversation, but also provide some tactical steps and some things that the listener can go and take and implement in their life. And that's really the whole point of the book. Is I tell my story. I talk about how I've generated millions of impressions online. I've made well over 8 figures in sales for different products and services. And so I don't say any of that to brag. I say that to say that as a guy who used to be overweight, who used to not have the level of confidence that I used to have, if you just trust the process and fall in and believe in yourself, it's pretty crazy what can happen for you. You might end up on a podcast like this, getting to share your story with someone who resonates with your message and chooses to change their life. And you never know what kind of impact you're going to make with that.
Speaking of impact, I wanted to ask you before it gets too late. When you're vice president of Break Free coaching, and what, as a coach and a mentor, what do you see as some of the most common problems, hurdles, those limitations that your proteges, coaching students run into or bring to you most frequently?
To just be real straight, it's procrastination. People thinking they have more time than they truly do. And we're all guilty of it in our own way. That's why I'm not afraid to be like, hey, I'm also guilty of this. But procrastination is the number one killer of dreams, because if you wait to take action, you're basically delaying the result by an exponential amount. Because this is how things work. When an object gets in motion, it stays in motion unless it's acted upon by another force. So if you just take action, you're going to get results and the things are going to start happening. But if you never actually start, there's no momentum for you to keep moving forward with. So that's number one. Number two, and this is a whole nother conversation for another day probably, but from a business owner and sales perspective, the number one problem that people have in their business is they don't call the damn leads, because opportunity is in abundance and most people aren't making an effort to go out there and take advantage of that opportunity. And it's not going away, it's just going to someone else. And if you're not willing to pick up the phone and call those individuals who have said they are interested in what you do and how you can help them, well, then you're not fulfilling your duty as a servant on this planet, because you got to call the damn leads if you're going to talk to them and be able to find out if you can solve their problem. And if you can solve their problem, well, then dadgummit, it's your duty to do everything you can to do so. And so those are the two biggest things I see.
First you cited one of my favorites, Newton's first law of kicking ass. And also, you're absolutely right with the first, also the procrastination. There's maybe a resistance. It's not just that they're holding off, but sometimes we're holding off because that imposter syndrome or some other limitation, some kind of mental block that's holding us back from doing what we know we need to do. In real estate, getting properties under contract has a direct correlation to how many offers are being made. So if you're not making offers, you're not getting properties under contract. So that's the first thing I ask. How many contracts did we get on? You get signed this week. Well, how many offers did we make? You're absolutely right. All you got to do sometimes is ask. You got to do that work, because it doesn't come without doing the work. One of my college summer break jobs was doing door-to-door book sales. And it was just how many doors could I knock on? And of course, there's going to be, we don't like hearing no. But you got to get through those no's, and you got to put in the reps, right? It's just like going to the gym. You don't like going to the gym because you could be doing something else that's a lot more fun, right? But you got to put in the reps. You got to knock on those doors. You got to ask. You got to make those offers. You got to hear the no, and you got to get through those no's before you can get to the yes. And that there's a thing about getting through all those no's, because you get better, you get stronger, and eventually you hear more yeses. And you're absolutely right about the procrastination. It's inertia. Once you take those first steps, you start building up that inertia, the momentum, and that is hard to stop. So I really appreciate your time. I thoroughly enjoy this conversation. Where can others, look you up, learn more about you, get in contact with you if they need to, and generally find out more?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's honestly been my pleasure to be here. And, when our mutual friend was telling me about your story and your mission, I thought, man, this is really something I'm excited to be a part of. And so I'm glad that the timing worked out. And then at the end of the day, we really got to have this deep, meaningful conversation. So first, I want to thank you for your time, because it really means a lot to me. And thank you to the listener who spent that last hour or so with us hearing all these stories, and hopefully getting one piece of information that they can go and implement to create that impact in their life and really make a change. So, with that being said, if anyone is interested in learning more about me, my story, my podcast, any of that, you can go to connectwithdrewbie.com. So it's Drew, DREWBIE.com. So connectwithdrewbie.com. It has a link to all of my social media, my podcast. I have my books on there. Honestly, at this point, Aaron, I've done a lot of cool things in my life, and I don't say that to brag. I say that to inspire the listener, because there's so much opportunity for us to tell our story and to put it out there and truly help others, that I want everyone that's listening right now, yourself included, to feel more inspired to go out there and crush the day, because that's really going to be the difference between us creating that impact, or us deciding this is the end and going lights out. And I don't think anybody here wants to go lights out today. So let's go out there and crush the day together.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. This was, like I said, a fantastic conversation. And I really appreciate your time, Drewbie.